All right, chapter 12 is the last chapter on Congress or the legislative branch. In this chapter, we're going to talk about checks and balances and kind of what the powers of Congress really are. So, the main job description, the main powers that Congress has or the legislative branch has, is to pass laws, also called passing legislation. They can also overturn a president's veto. They can declare war, regulate trade, regulate money, and impeach federal officials. Checks and balances, the legislative branch has checks on both the executive and the judicial branch. Legislative checks on the executive branch include: Congress can overturn a presidential veto with a two-thirds vote of both houses. Senate can reject proposed treaties with a two-thirds vote to approve. Senate can also reject presidential nominations for federal judges or officials. And then Congress can impeach and remove a president. We already went over that the House serves as the prosecution and the Senate serves as the jury. The legislative branch also has checks and balances on the judicial branch. Congress can create lower courts. The Senate can reject nominees to federal courts. Congress can amend the Constitution to change laws, to change Supreme Court decisions. Congress can impeach and remove judges from the bench. Congress is organized a little bit differently than the other two branches. The executive branch is pretty much just the president, and then anybody he says is in his cabinet. The judicial branch is the Supreme Court. The legislative branch makes laws, and so they have the most complicated system. So Congress starts a new term every 2 years. January 5th is when it officially starts. Both the House and the Senate pick their leaders. When a new session of Congress is called, the clerk calls the chamber to order and checks the newly elected officials. The Speaker of the House is sworn in. Speaker is like the president of the House. He's the main guy in charge of the House of Representatives. The House then elects all the different members of their of the House of Representatives. So all their officers, people who have specific roles and things. These people aren't necessarily members of the House of Representatives. And then the House adopts the rules. The rules have always been the same. So we have two congressmen, the 14th Congressional District, Randy Hultgren, Republican, and then you have Robert Dole, the 10th Congressional District, is a Republican. The Senate convenes. Remember, the Senate is a continuous body. That means only 1/3 of the seats are up for re-election every 2 years. The other 2/3 just remain in office until it's their turn for election. That way, there's always somebody sitting in the Senate. So during the first meeting of the new senators are sworn into office. Vacancies that are left in various committees are ended up filled. Sometimes senators volunteer for these, sometimes they're assigned to them. Our representatives, Dick Durbin is Democrat, and Mark Kirk is Republican. The heads of the House are the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate. President of the Senate is the Vice President. You have the majority and minority leaders. Those are the people who develop the strategies for their particular houses and how their party should vote. And then you have the majority and the minority whip. What they do is they make sure that everybody in their party votes along company lines. So they're kind of in charge of getting everybody on the same page. Majority and minority leader kind of decides the direction the Congress is going, and then the whip kind of gets everybody in order. Both the House and the Senate use committees to look at and pass legislation or laws. There are 4 types of committees. There's a standing committee. They meet regularly and do normal business. So like budget committees and stuff like that. Then there's select or special committees. They're put together by Congress to study or investigate a specific thing. And then you have joint committees, which include members from both the House and the Senate. And then you have subcommittees, which are created by standing committees to address specific issues. So for example, maybe you have the budget committee is a standing committee, but then you have a subcommittee on military appropriations in, Vietnam or something, and how much money we can cut from the military budget in like a certain section of the world or something like that. That's just an example off the top of my head. The head honcho, the chairperson in the committee chairperson is like they're like the president of their little committee. Like they're in charge of what bills get pushed into Congress and get voted on and which ones don't. It's kind of an unwritten rule where the person who has been around the longest becomes the chairperson. It's not always the case. And we're going to stop there. You just don't have to worry about the rest of these.